G'day everyone, a bit of an update here on the Gangs of Metacadia game that we are currently building, the strategy game. In this developer update, I wanted to talk about just an overview of how things work and what it is we're actually building. So we have a front end that's in Next.js, of course, very common framework for building front ends these days. Wouldn't imagine going anywhere else. The fact that we can sort of have server-side rendering, routing, linking, all the beautiful things of Next.js that it offers out of the box is amazing for what we're building. We have an API that is built for the game, so we built our own API that has a WebSocket endpoint as well for chat. We are using Bedrock on AWS for the AI side of things, so any sort of inference that we need to do against any sort of model, we do via Bedrock. So we're using Claude Haiku to start off with, but we'll probably move over to Claude Opus as that becomes a little bit more available very shortly. That's going to be doing all the generation of the events, such as the fights and so on. And then we'll be passing off the output from Bedrock into 11 Labs. And 11 Labs will do all of the audio generation based on the output from Bedrock. And so that's going to be all orchestrated through events, which we'll talk about shortly. On the database side of things, we're using DynamoDB. On the back end, our API sits in front of Dynamo, which is just pretty much the most scalable managed NoSQL database in the world. Absolutely no reason to use anything else. It's what we know, it's what we love. All of our back end is written in Go. We are very big in the Go space. We love that, so we just stick with it because it's what we know. We are using Admitly, which is a product by Somnio on the back end, and that is responsible for listening to our smart contracts and executing Go code in response to those smart contracts. So when things happen in the game, like a team gets eliminated, or even if someone mints an insignia, we have a subset of Go code that runs to ensure that the database is kept up to date with the state of the chain. And also it allows us to sort of perform real-time events based on things if we want to, right? Like a new leader emerging in a gang, we can sort of act upon that in real time and push some state into the game. And we also use MetaFuse, which is another product by Somnio, to create the digital assets on the fly when a mint occurs, right? So someone mints an insignia, we go ahead and just like create that in real time with the image that they specifically minted with. And that allows us also to inject other bits of information into that image. Like we could even inject a username, their rank in the gang, that sort of stuff. Like it allows us to be flexible with what we actually put on the digital asset as it's being minted. So this is just a little bit of the overview of how things work. So as for a code side of things, what we're currently building out right now is just the different endpoints. So we have our backend here, which is our API backend. We're building out the different endpoints here for the data so that the front end can sort of fetch that. So like leaderboard, season, gangs, insignia, influence, notifications. We're just building that out right now. So I'm just building out a sense where you can, if we flick over to the game, you can kind of see in the game, you're going to have some notifications that'll pop out on the side here. So like if you're away for a few days or if you missed anything that happened, you can just kind of like click through and see what's happened. Okay, there's a new event for the Neon Syndicate, or the Digital Drifters got eliminated and you want to see and understand what happened in that fight. You'll be able to see it in the notification section over here. So that's key to sort of, the whole application development landscape there. So we have our API, we have our backend stack. So all of the infrastructure that sort of pieces together the, everything the game is made up in is done in AWS CDK. So all of the infrastructure as code. If we wanted to find routes on our API, that's all done in here, all the databases, all of the queues, all the bits and pieces that we need to run this product are all defined in infrastructure as code. All of our smart contracts are defined in here. We have a Gangs of Metacadia smart contract, which has all of the core functions like eliminating the gangs, declaring war, calculating influence, and all the maths that's involved in that sort of stuff, right? We need to have a way in which we determine how powerful a gang is, and so all of that is stored on chain. And every time we want to do something, we emit an event, right? So things like emit influence added, right? So someone's adding influence, either positive or negative, to a gang. That will be emitted from the smart contract, and then Emitly will pick that up and execute code in response to, into that specific action. So whatever it needs to do. In this case, go and update a database to make sure that that's reflected on the front end in real time. The reason why we do this is twofold. You don't want to have a game that's fully dependent on having a wallet connected. You want to have the ability to access data from an API in a really fast and scalable approach, because it allows you to do caching, it allows you to view the data when there's no wallet connected. It allows you to just sort of have way more flexibility over what data is stored, right? If you're storing things on chain, you're kind of working with integers, typically addresses, or in some cases strings, but quite rarely. So we want to sort of have events that fire off from the smart contract, so we can go and sort of work with that data in our Go code on the back end to sort of keep that flexible. We have an NFT contract, or the ERC 721, I should say, contract that is the insignia, right? That holds some information about who minted it, and what it exactly was, what gang they joined, and all that sort of stuff. And that insignia interfaces with the game contract to make sure that the person's able to do things. Like you can't access certain things of the gang that you're not part of, right? And that's held, that data is in that state is actually stored in the insignia itself. So it's a completely non-transferable 721. People call this like a soul-bound asset. So you can't transfer it. You can burn it, but I mean, there's absolutely no reason to burn it. But it's completely non-transferable, meaning people can't sell their insignia to other people during the season if they are in a advantageous position as such. So that's kind of it for a bit of an update. We've got our back end sort of all coming along nicely. We've got the digital asset contract. We've got a bunch of listeners, like I said. So one key thing to highlight is we have listeners, right? So listeners down here. So for example, like every time a mint function is called, we have some Go code that runs, and each one of those bits of code has their own Docker container that they run in. And this is what Emitly is able to sort of seamlessly do for us. So we just define a bunch of code that we want to run in response to events, and then we create a compose file. And then we just simply push this up to Emitly, and Emitly will then run, in a guaranteed fashion when one of these events happens. And that allows us to sort of control the state of the game and sort of update our state on the back end depending on what happened on the smart contract. It creates that really nice seamless bridge between Web 3 and Web 2. So it's kind of like how we're really able to sort of run this seamlessly in the background. Right, okay, so that's a bit of an update on the dev side of things and an overview of sort of what's happening behind the scenes. The game is coming along quite well. The last update has mainly been focused on the back-end components, really focused on the smart contract, getting that logic in place. We've written hundreds of tests to ensure that things are working as intended. We're doing some testing with the scores right now. I just clicked through to the current leader of that gang, so I'll just go back. You can see here we have like an influence that's increasing, a wealth of the gang, and a one holder here. And so this is coming along as intended. We're going to be doing some testing with a few different wallets to test out sort of the incremental rate of influence and what that means for the overall score. But that's the current update on things. The next update will probably be more shifted back into the front end side of things once we've caught up on the back end logic of the game. But yep, that's a bit of an overview for the Dev Update 3. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.